options around savings and use of reserves, etc. Obviously, our officers are continuing to work on the budget, and there can continue to be discussions with the trade unions. Unfortunately, one of our groups has now withdrawn from the members' budget working group, but I would hope that you may well reconsider that at some point in the future, and certainly my door is always open for discussions. We've obviously had our budget consultation, which is reflected in Appendix 11 in the report, and crucially we've received the draft local government financial settlement for 24-25, and I think we can all agree it's very disappointing. Mr. Hutton's outlined the cash cut in terms of our revenue funding of £2 million, but if you actually take into account inflation, pay rises, etc., I reckon it's at least 3 times that. We've had a cut in our capital funding of £300,000, and again, we've taken inflation into account significantly more than that. The Scottish Government, we know, are now offering councils a share of £144 million to raise the council tax. We don't know what our share would be. There is an estimate in the report, but the government has not yet confirmed the basis for the distribution of that. So, on the basis of the current scenario, we face very difficult decisions over the coming week, Provost, and that's certainly made it more difficult by the council tax fees, even if we get a share of £144 million. And I have to say, I personally, and people won't be surprised at this, personally oppose the council tax fees policy. I think it's irresponsible, and I think it's wrong. It's wrong in principle. It drives us as our democratic right, the Scotland elected councillors, to set their own levels of council tax. It fundamentally undermines the very house of payment. It's also wrong in practice, because it's regressive, because it fails to support the lowest income households in Scotland. And I have to say, I was interested to see yesterday's report by the Scottish Parliament's Finance and Administration Committee on their initial review of the draft Scottish budget for 24-25, and on council tax. It said, and I will quote this one: "The committee notes that the Scottish Government's decision to freeze council tax for 24-25 does not expressly target those in poverty. We therefore question how the policy aligns with the Scottish Government's plan to prioritise spending on areas that deliver its 3 missions, 2 of its missions being poverty and good public services." And the committee went on to say the committee seeks an update in progress for undertaking a fundamental reform of council tax to ensure fairness and develop a sustainable funding model for local authorities. So the reality, Provost, is that the council tax freeze is unfair and it's regressive. It does not benefit those who are the lowest income, and it's opposed by anti-poverty groups, including the Poverty Alliance, who said yesterday, and again I quote, "The Scottish Government's tax freeze will hurt people on low income because the wealthiest households get the biggest benefit, and the resulting damage to our local services affects all of us, but especially those who need them most." And it also further undermines the financial sustainability of councils. At a time, I have to say, Provost, when councils have never faced greater financial insecurity, we see councils in England effectively facing bankruptcy, and we know councils in Scotland are under huge pressure. And I have to say, if the First Minister would genuinely want to support low-income families with council tax bills, the best way to do that is through the council tax reduction scheme. Make the criteria for that more generous, bring more families into the scope of council tax reduction. That's a far better targeted way of supporting families. We did have information at our most recent meeting on the member budget working group on those who are receiving council tax discounts, council tax reduction, how the scheme for council tax reduction works. And it's clear to me that if you want to help more families, those who maybe don't benefit from full council tax reduction, or those who are out with the scope of council tax reduction, make the scheme more generous, as we've done in this council in terms of availability of clothing, grants, etc. We've made the scheme available to more people. And I have to say, Provost, I was gobsmacked today when I learned about Scottish Water putting up charges for 24-25 by 8.8%. That has been sanctioned by the Scottish Government. And indeed, at the First Minister's questions today, the First Minister was challenged on it, and simply did not have an answer to the question: how can you support Scottish Water putting its charges up by 8.8%? And don't forget, the lowest income houses don't get full reduction on water charges. They have to pay a minimum of 65%. So how can the government sanction that increase, but at the same point argue for a council tax freeze for all households in Scotland, including the most wealthiest? We've got a few millionaires in this area. In fact, we're told we've got a couple of billionaires in this area, and they're getting a council tax freeze. And this is the Scottish Water justification for why they're putting up charges by 8.8%. And I would ask members to reflect on this when we're thinking about our decisions around council tax. So the press release says, the increase in household charges, which amounts to less than 70 pence a week on average, will help Scottish Water continue to meet our customers' expectations, ensure resilience for the future, and ensure a fair balance between what customers today are paying and what future generations will need to contribute. The Water Charges Reduction Scheme and other discounts, exemptions and relief, which apply to around 50% of all households in Scotland, are in place to help those customers who may struggle to pay. Just reflect on that when we're discussing and debating council tax, whether that's today or some other point. And as I said, the First Minister, at First Minister's questions today, defended Scottish Water being able to put up the charges for that money. You couldn't make it. That's the reality of it. And over the last 16 years, what's happened to council tax? Frozen for 9 years as a condition of the last local government settlement. That was also the case in 21-22. 4 years of a cap. And only in the past 2 years have we been allowed to increase council tax without penalty. So over the last 16 years, council tax increases have averaged 1.1%. That's a huge real terms cut in council tax income. And I was asked a question actually on social media by one of my constituents who came home late last night, which I got this morning. What's the council tax average increase what's the council tax increases over the last 5 years? And when I looked at the figures, the average is 3%. So over the last 5 years, when we have faced enormous challenges around our budgets, this council has responsibly set council tax at a level that we felt was reasonable, an average of 3%. So we don't make irrational decisions around council tax. We always balance cuts in council tax and affordability. But the reality is that 16 years of an average 1% increase is a big part of the problem we face today. Because councils are now far too reliant on Scottish Government funding. 84% of our funding comes from Scottish Government, only 14% comes from council tax and 2% from fees and charges. And I'm sure I'm not alone in seeing the criticism of a 5% increase in the permit for refuse. And the reality is now, because of that balance, if we get a 1% cut in our funding, we have to put council tax up by 6% to match that. I think in Castell, maybe had a 1.7%. So as it stands, over the next few weeks, we face difficult choices, and they are made more difficult by a politically motivated council tax freeze, which will result in cuts to jobs and services. But we do have a choice. We can either accept that, or we can make an alternative decision. And that's what the consultation allows us to do, and make a decision when we hear the views of the public. And I think it's worth reminding members that on the 15th of August at the Policy and Resources Committee, we agreed by a majority vote a council tax planning assumption of 7% for the next 2 years. All of us felt it was prudent to assume we were going to increase council tax. The Conservative Unionist Group felt 7% was a bit on the high side, so we moved an amendment to 5%. They were outvoted by 10 votes to 1, and at least 2 of the groups indicated that they would be prepared potentially to go above 7% to protect jobs and services. And why are we even debating a council tax freeze? It's because out of the blue, the First Minister announced at the SNP conference on the back of a by-election defeat that he was going to impose a council tax freeze across the whole of Scotland. And I know that there cannot be one councillor in this room or one councillor in any part of Scotland who believes that a council tax freeze is the right policy. It's the wrong policy at the wrong time. Very few seem to want to say that publicly, keeping their own council, fear of upsetting their party leadership. But I have to say, I think it's time for all councillors to find a backbone and tell publicly the First Minister that the Emperor has no clothes on. And I think we shouldn't get lulled into a false sense of security with the reports before us today, because the options in Appendix 10A and 10B, the gap would be significantly greater if we weren't using reserves. 10A, 3.74 million, 10B, 3 million reserves. Those reserves will run out. They will run out, and reflect on that Scottish Water quote earlier on about future generations and the balance between who pays charges. So once they run out, the impact of those reserves is that a 3.74 million worth of reserves requires a 10.7 increase in council tax to plug that gap. 3 million requires 8.6%. So we're simply, by using reserves, I'm not going to say we shouldn't use reserves, we're simply deferring cuts in council tax rises to future years. And that underlies, in my opinion, probably the folly of freezing council tax in 24-25. And I've just come from a national Scottish Joint Council meeting where the trade unions presented their pay claims for 24-25, from a joint claim from Unite and Unison and a claim from GMB. And their pay demands, and those of other unions, including the teaching unions, are averaging about 7 to 8%. We've got a draft budget assumption of 3%. How are we going to find the rest of the money to get a settlement with our trade unions over the coming months? And I have to say, and this is the position of Cosworth, it's supported by every council leader in Scotland. We recognise the financial challenges faced by the Scottish Government, but the solution to this issue is give councils the 144 million through the distribution formula and allow us to make our own decisions in council tax. And if we got that money, I'm confident we would make a balanced judgment again between council tax rises and cuts. Can Cosworth continue to lobby for that position? Continue to lobby for flexibility around some of the issues that Alan's highlighted earlier in the meeting. But as it stands at this point in time, the Scottish Government doesn't seem to be listening to its own council leaders, never mind Labour, Conservative or independent council leaders. So we're in a difficult position, we have difficult challenges in the weeks ahead. It is important to consult and listen to the views of the public. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we come back in a few weeks' time, we are going to have to make those tough decisions for us. And with that, I will move the recommendations of the report and invite Councillor Maguire to second.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Maguire, please.
Thank you, Provost. Can I confirm that everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Provost. First, I'd like to intimate my disappointment at the withdrawal of our political group from the Members' Budget Working Group. I hope they know, as Councillor McCabe said, that the door is open, and I hope that they reconsider their position and rejoin the group during this budget cycle. I think one of the best practice things we do politically across the piece tier is the Members' Budget Working Group. It allows everyone to have a say in the budget process, for all groups to work collaboratively together with advice from officers on what is increasingly more and more difficult task each budget cycle. Councillor McCabe has went into great detail about some of the implications of the subpar settlement we have received. The settlement is worse than we'd anticipated, and the pre-existing pressures of increased costs since the pandemic and increased levels of inflation are still being felt, alongside our need to pay our employees fairly whilst delivering the services people in our area need. Our services have been decimated across the past 16 years of continual cuts. We need to have a better settlement this year so that we can protect jobs and services that local people rely on. We need the Scottish Government, the SNP and Greens to step up and fulfil the Buried House Agreement. We are still being constrained by single-year settlements, ring fencing, threats of financial sanctions if we make certain cuts, even though we must make cuts for this settlement amount. And that's not even including pressures such as net zero that are coming down the line to us. Let the local council have freedom to set a budget which gives us the autonomy to use our funds as and where we see local needs. The Buried House Agreement was meant to refresh our relationship with Scottish Government, but from where I'm standing and from this budget settlement, very little has changed. I want to finish with a thank you to people who did participate in the last consultation, because I'm aware that one of the recommendations today is to go out for further consultation. Thank you to every single person who has engaged, and I would plead with our public to continue engaging with us. If you haven't already in the past, please participate in this consultation so that we are able to make informed decisions based on the public voice. Thank you, Alan, to you and to the officers around the table for this report, and thank you, colleagues, for listening to myself and Councillor McCabe today. I second this report.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you very much, Provost. We would like to put forward an amendment today, which would be accepting the report with the exclusion of recommendations 2.7 and 2.15. So the report as it stands, minus the public consultation. And I'll just take a few moments if that's possible, Provost, cover that and explain why. Provost, I always like to reflect on comments that are made to our group and to myself across this chamber, and we get a lot of challenge about the choices that the Scottish Government makes. I understand where my government, where the Scottish Government is coming from, in terms of consistently choosing to put and keep money in the pockets of people in this country through things like free prescriptions and free university tuition and travel costs, baby boxes, various things that put and keep money in people's pockets. Because I understand that every day my government at Holyrood is mitigating harm that is caused by a series of very different choices that are made in another government during Westminster. Choosing a council tax freeze, I understand it is another example of a manifestation of the desire to keep money in people's pockets. The people in our community are seeing rising costs in every area of their lives. And Councillor McCabe a few moments ago spoke about the pay claims that have been put forward and the pay increases that we have implemented as an organisation and that we've seen across the public sector and beyond in the past couple of years, because the people in our community have needed higher than usual increases in their pay to help them stay afloat. It's not been the normal 2 and 3% increases that have helped them to survive in the context of decisions that have not been the control of the Scottish Government in Holyrood and have absolutely not been in control of this council here in this chamber in terms of the rising costs in every area of their life. So I understand, Provost, the government at Holyrood making decisions and that try at every possible turn to keep money in people's pockets. So the council tax freeze is a choice, but it will help some households who, it's a trite term, but have too much months left at the end of their money, and who every month that they are moving forward as their families are moving further into debt, every penny is counting for a lot of families in our community who may not be at the very, very lowest income levels, but who are struggling, are absolutely struggling. So I do understand that. The reason that we feel that we can't support public consultation is not that we don't believe in full consultation. We absolutely do. We're on record as saying that we do. And we've said it in the Members' Budget Working Group when we were there also. What we do feel, however, is that we have had a recent consultation. We have got the results of that in the appendices with us today. We know where the public stand in terms of the cuts and savings that have been proposed and in terms of council tax. But this particular consultation is being proposed at this particular time, we feel is not going to be very helpful to us. And the reason for that is because over the next few weeks, between now today, when we have this meeting and when we have our meeting at the end of February to finally set our budget, things will have to change. We only have to look at the situation that's already been alluded to in terms of finances for local government in England to know that the dials will have to shift. And if the dial shifts in terms of that context, then they will inevitably have an impact on public finances here in Scotland. We're lobbying for change. That's another challenge that comes to us quite a lot. We're lobbying for the variables that we have within our budget to be looked at. We talk to the people that we have the ear of. We talk to the people that we have relationships with within our own party to make that case, and that will go on over the next few weeks unabated. Confirm to the colleagues that that will absolutely be the case. But we just feel that at this time there is so much that is yet unknown. Mr. Puckering alluded to that in his opening remarks. There are so many things that are yet to be settled over the next few weeks, that going out with this consultation at this time means that we will be getting information back that may not be helpful to us on a financial package that may not be what accurately is the situation that we have to make our decisions on. So Provost, we thank everyone for the work that's been done in terms of bringing forward this report, but we would ask that our amendment be we do not go into public consultation on the report. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do you have a seconder?
I do.
Councillor Turner.
Having the second the amendment by my colleague, and Mr. Robertson has expressed succinctly the issues here with respect to this now. I'm not old in the tooth as some members are in the chamber with respect to budgets. Some people have been here since 2007, some people a lot longer. But from my experience, of course, we've been through this process before, and one of the things that is a bugbear of mine is the last minute nature of these budget negotiations, etc. And we're back in the stage again. So I think we're in this situation because there is a pull between two distinct governments, and it is, I'm going to widen my comments out a little bit, it is a flaw in the devolution settlement in that we are reliant on funding for the Scottish Government in general. I know there is some exceptions, is reliant on body spending that's decided by the UK government, whatever political view. If these two political governments are working in unison or the same political bent, then that would be called that drag and pull is not significant. But since 2010, there's been a distinct difference of philosophy between the Scottish and UK governments on a wide variety of issues. And this has led to this, what I would say, this constant merry-go-round we have as a council. So in reality, we've got to look at what's happening. Councillor Cave alluded to it, and other people have alluded to it as well. That there's a lack of funding generally in councils. I would like to see more funding come to Scotland, and you have to look at, well, what's causing that issue. And if you look today at what they call the Levelling Up Housing and Communities Committee of the UK Parliament, there's been a report today that's basically said that there's been another 4 billion of additional funding, just not to break even, just to head off the financial crisis, the out of control financial crisis that's affecting councils in England. Now, I'm not saying that for an open political point, but it just demonstrates the tensions that are in the system here. And I quite agree with Councillor Cave that we do need to have a more robust and sustainable local government, financial local government, which isn't overly reliant on funding from central government, no matter where that's from. And that's part of the issue here, is we need to get back to that local decision making, and I quite agree. And it's quite interesting that a part of the committee today, in a report today, actually suggests that the council tax is a regressive form of taxation, and we need to change the bands in England. The bands in England need to change. I think it's remarked that a 3-bedroom semi in Blackpool has the same council tax as Buckingham Palace. And obviously, in the past, the Scottish Government made changes to the council tax in Scotland, which had the impact of bringing more funds into what they call local government. We increased the number and what they call it the range change for the upper bands. And of course, we all know there was a consultation on that this year. Unfortunately, only 4 councils responded to that consultation. I suppose that if we had more responses, we might have a different result to that consultation. That might have given us the opportunity to make more changes to council tax, make it less regressive. And it means that more people who can more afford it, generally people pay more tax, and that would enable us to have the positive impact on the middle people who don't benefit from either council options or what we call it, or other benefits. So that's what I just wanted to just widen that out a little bit with respect to that. We do need to do something about local government finances. We do need to, but we also need to balance this budget this year. And looking at it at the moment, if we go out to consultation on these issues, what we're going to see when we get back in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time will be completely different. So I think we've got the consultation pack previously. We know generally where people are with respect to their services. The paper highlights where we're considering possible cuts. So I think we have what we need to do to both continue to lobby both governments to see about additional funding, and also what decisions we need to make locally to balance the budget when it comes to the environmental budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curley. Does any other member wish to contribute? Councillor McKay.
Okay. Well, it was a shorter debate than I thought we were going to have. Disappointed in the main, I have to say, very, very disappointed in the main that it's important that you do consult the public. In the previous consultation was a fairly high level, it didn't have definite proposals. This consultation has definite proposals. I admire Councillor Robertson's valiant efforts to defend the council tax base policy. I don't actually believe that I might be honest, I don't actually believe that you believe what you're saying there, to be perfectly honest. The council tax freeze is regressive. We know it's regressive, and the Poverty Alliance tells us that it's regressive. All the other poverty groups tells us it's regressive. We've got 11,000 people in this area who are either on council tax reduction or exempt from council tax. They don't benefit from a council tax freeze. We saw the figures around what a 7% or 5% or 9% freeze or increase means for people in this room and out there. And I'm sorry, I did use the example before when we were talking about 7%, and I went to Celtic Park and sat for there a pint of bottle. It cost me £6.50 for my pint of bottle. Weekly council tax rise, of 7% would cost me £3.13 a week. Come on, let's get it in perspective. No, I do understand that. I do understand the argument about people who are just beyond council tax reduction. But you don't help them by giving everybody else a council tax freeze. You help them by making council tax reduction more generous. And I made that very point at COSLA last Friday, and I asked COSLA to raise that case for the Scottish Government. So that case has been made to the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government knows that the policy is wrong, but the First Minister's dug himself into a hole that he's not prepared to get out of. And I have to say, in terms of the expectations of Councillor Robertson that things will change in the coming weeks, I did share with Councillor Robertson today in confidence letters that COSLA has sent to the Government yesterday. It has been shared with other members of the Members' Budget Working Group around some fundamental issues connected to the budget, in the hope that the Government will change its mind. But as of Friday afternoon, the Deputy First Minister says there's no more money. There's no movement on council tax freeze. We want a freeze, and if you don't freeze it, you'll not get your share of the money. There's no movement and flexibilities around teachers, etc. So it's fun, and the words that were relayed to me around council tax was there is no negotiation. It's a take it or leave it. Now, this is a government who, when the First Minister stood up, and then indeed the Deputy First Minister stood up in Parliament, said, we're going to negotiate a council tax freeze with local government, and it's going to be fully funded. Right? It's not fully funded. COSLA has pointed out a £63 million cut off 144 million gives you the equivalent of 2.8% of a council tax free subsidy. It's not fully funded, right? And there's not been any negotiations. They've simply said that's it, take it or leave it. So I'm sorry, that is a fundamental breach to the very House agreement. So if there's an expectation that things are going to change in the coming weeks, I don't share that optimism that Councillor Robertson and Councillor Curley's expressing. And I don't think that's shared by council leaders, SNP council leaders who are facing the same challenge that I'm facing in setting a budget the coming weeks. And I saw that at the cause of the meeting. I saw the fact that the SNP council leaders were not happy. And they were the ones that were pushing back in certain things around education, etc. Because they're looking at these flexibilities to try and balance their budgets. And if they don't get those flexibilities, they're in a hell of a position. So I wish there was, and I have to say, I did have a wee bit more optimism last week. But when I saw the report back from the meeting on Friday, and I saw the letters that they said, I don't have any optimism that we're going to see anything. Councillor Curley, deflections, blame the Tories, the big bad Tories at Westminster. They've got a share of that blame to get. But your argument is fatally undermined by the fact there's £144 million of council tax fees money that could be used. That money is available. It's about how you privatise that. Talked about councils in England and financial crisis, councils in Scotland and financial crisis. Talked about changes to the council tax. There's not been a re-evaluation since 1991, and again it was SNP councillors who are pushing it towards the last week for the re-evaluation. The SNP came out in 2007, nearly 17 years ago, when I first became the leader of this council, promising to abolish the council tax. Well, anywhere near that. The First Minister talked about the changes to the banding. The First Minister proposed the changes to the banding to make council tax more fair, less regressive. And he went from that to a council tax freeze, a total somersault, right? One position where saying those in the higher bands can afford to pay a bit more to protect public services, to saying those in the higher bands need a council tax freeze to protect their discretionary income. I'm sorry, it's a complete fallacy. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Members, we have a motion to accept the 18 recommendations, and we have an amendment. Mr. Strachan, please.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So, members, ask you to indicate your vote for, against, or not voting in respect to the motion from Councillor McKee, the amendment from Councillor Robertson. So, Councillor Armstrong, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Councillor Brennan.
Motion.
Councillor Brooks.
Motion.
Councillor Cassidy.
Motion.
Councillor Clockerty.
Motion.
Councillor Crowther.
Amendment.
Councillor Curley.
Amendment.
Councillor Daisley.
Amendment.
Councillor Jackson.
Motion.
Councillor Law.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor McCluskey.
Motion.
Councillor McCormick.
Motion.
Councillor Maguire.
Motion.
Officer Mackenzie.
Motion.
Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Moran.
Motion.
Councillor Quinn. Councillor Reynolds.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
And Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
So the motion is carried by 14 votes to 7.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. That brings the meeting to a close, members. Thank you for your attendance, and thanks to the office staff for putting this, clerical staff for putting this meeting together.